Welcome to Season 3, Episode 3 of the 6 M's of Manufacturing podcast. I'm your host, Adrienne Temple. Many manufacturing organizations are continually challenged with backfilling skilled positions, especially in the maintenance department. In many cases, promoting from within and upskilling existing employees is a viable option to maintain continuity. In this episode, we're talking with Robin Blackburn, Technical AP External Training Manager at Michelin. In recent years, Michelin has begun offering its technical training to other manufacturers in South Carolina to support bridging the skills gap. Buckle up, this is where rubber meets road. Robin, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So your role, let's see if I get it right, Technical AP External Training Manager at Michelin. That's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. We've seen the original that they wanted to place on it. So AP refers to our maintenance training school outside of Michelin. Even our AP school is very well known in the community, so we kept that in. But basically, I'm over the external training, technical training offering for outside manufacturing outside of Michelin in itself. So
Okay. And you've been with Michelin for quite a while in your career.
yes. So at the beginning of 2025, we'll mark 20 years, which I cannot believe. I also have worked like the magic tricks within Michelin. I have been connected to our maintenance technician organization my entire career, supporting it in the way of development, learning and development. For a period of time, I was over all of the apprenticeship programs that feed that pipeline. So, really, anything centered around workforce development, employee development, I have been able to navigate through various roles to support that. And I've been in this current role for 3 years. So I feel very vested and passionate about what we're doing, even in this current offering.
Yeah, that's amazing to have kind of a consistent presence in one particular segment of the business. That's kind of rare, right? We usually kind of bounce around in different places. So you're definitely deeply embedded in that maintenance side. That's really awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. So the training at Michelin internally, what is, because I know Michelin's very well known for the quality of their training for their existing employees, but can we talk a little bit about kind of what is the approach that Michelin takes as an organization when they're looking at skill development of their existing employees, especially on that, maintenance competencies? I mean, what's the traditional approach that they take to training?
Yeah, really, Michelin has a strong mission to develop people. And regardless of the role that you're in, I currently am going through further development and training just to further, grow my competencies in my own position as manager. So, but within the technical workforce, we have had a dedicated training school for our maintenance technicians for more than 45 years. In fact, we believe we're closer to 50 than the 45. We actually had come across a picture the other day of the first training class, and we're trying to determine exactly what the time frame was. But they saw a need of needing to continually upskill the competencies for a maintenance technician position or really any area within the company, but more so to our AP school. We knew we needed to address that and then continue that on all of these years. Now, being with the organization for so long, I have seen where we have cycled through having classes that were 10 weeks in length and then revisiting what that class needed to have within that and trying to reduce that down to minimize, the employee being out of the facility for so long. I say all that to say is that we continually are trying to improve our training offerings. And so it is really great to look back through the years of where we've improved, where we're trying to develop in new areas, just to continue that investment in that maintenance employee.
It's, I think that's one of the hardest things for manufacturers is kind of mobilizing around that skill development and upskilling process, right? I
Sure.
mean, you guys have it really systematized and there's programming around it and it provides really a solid infrastructure for skill development of your staff, and like you said, even beyond the technical, but definitely in that maintenance area, because that just seems to be such a challenge for many manufacturers because that's where a lot of their seasoned, truly experienced and expert resources are right now. And there seems to be some gaps. And I guess that kind of brings up this whole concept of the talent campus. Other industries, other manufacturers struggle with these types of skill development programs. But can we talk a little bit about kind of this whole concept of the talent campus with Michelin and what's the premise behind it? Where did it come from? What's the purpose? Can we talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So if we look at the health of manufacturing as a whole, not just Michelin, but both large and small group manufacturers, it really is supporting our economy as a whole, whether it be South Carolina, North Carolina, Alabama, wherever that would be. Michelin has a developed training that can assist with the upskilling of maintenance technicians, regardless if they're in Michelin or out. So, this is truly a community commitment and offering to help bridge the gaps to further develop employees at those facilities. I know when they approached me with this, I've been involved. Michelin has did this in the past. So I've been involved in that. And when they approached me about 3 years ago, it's because manufacturers had asked, would you be willing to offer some of your training externally? And so we brought a steering committee together because we needed to gauge one, what would the offerings look like? What would the true need be within the company? And could this be something that we can support on a sustainable level? Like each year, we know that we're going to have these offerings and we can keep the rhythm and pulse of that need within the community. So it truly is a commitment to upskilling the maintenance workforce as a whole. Now, it's been more than 3 years ago when I would have conversations with outside manufacturing companies because of my involvement in my previous role. I'd sit at these roundtable discussions, and we were all saying the same thing, even Michelin, that these are the struggles that we have in what we see in the gap. We'd work with technical colleges, we would work with, many different organizations to try to come together as one to solve what this next step to look like. So I started offering a benchmarking with companies. Come to our training school. We will show you what a roadmap of what we do for our employees would look like. And should they want to implement something within their company, we could give them some direction of maybe first places that they would want to start, how to develop the material, what we use to assess at the end of a training class, et cetera. And we really have taken a lot from those meetings, not just given the information. And I think manufacturers as a whole really appreciate that we're not so guarded that we believe, that we don't want to share any of this. Having a training school is a very expensive operation. And I think it gives companies the ability to be able to evaluate that earlier on and then know how they want to move forward. Should they not want to implement a training school, then we do have these external offerings that are made available if they wanted to send their employees to, further skill in different areas.
I think there's tremendous power in benchmarking. I mean, you mentioned that. That's really an interesting thought because, a lot of times it is people just don't even know where to start, right? I mean,
Right.
you don't have a curriculum for this stuff. You
Mhm.
have an experienced person that you may have already lost or is planning to retire soon, and there's just not a playbook for that, right? So, I mean, it's really outstanding that you have kind of approached it from a, "Hey, come just see what's involved in this and what this might look like and where, a starting point," like you said, just kind of where to begin. And that's a rare opportunity for most manufacturers. It's very hard for people to be able to go somewhere else and see what somebody else is doing. So, I mean, that's truly a unique opportunity that people should leverage. Period. But then it goes into, to your point, the classes as well, something that you guys are offering with the Talent Campus. Is Greenville the like talent campus that Michelin has, or is this more of a global effort with Michelin, or is it just in South Carolina?
No, it is a global effort. In fact, we have many training schools throughout the United States that we at some point will consider deploying an external offering should it be something that manufacturers in that area, truly desire and have a need for. We have this offering deployed in France, and also in Germany. We have a conversation right now taking place on evaluating doing an external offering in Mexico. So we're evaluating, and I never want to be quick to say let's deploy this in Fort Wayne, Indiana, without really doing the research around everything that, do we have the instructor capacity? Do we have the equipment availability? It's not just one or the other. And then how often can we offer the training desired in that area? So there's a lot of things that will come into place before we deploy in other areas. For the state of South Carolina, first year, even when we launched it, we had manufacturers that had approached Michelin, and then there was still a little bit of why is Michelin doing this? And so we really had to, engage with the community. We held several lunch and learns or business invites to bring them in, to show them our training facility, to really convey the passion that we have in upskilling of their employees. And so things have definitely each year have greatly picked up. We're working with right now, currently in the state of South Carolina, with 24 manufacturers, and within that, over 70% of our return students are from those manufacturers. So they've found a need to send additional students to some of the classes or new offerings that we have to offer. So I really feel like we're fostering the right classroom environment to really convey that their employer is investing in the upskilling and developing them further within their role.
That's really amazing to see that kind of growth in the program and see more repeat to customers where they realize the value proposition and they're benefiting from it and they see an opportunity to send another person through or send them to another class. I mean, that's really a testament to what's happening here. And really from a community standpoint, it's very rare to see a manufacturing organization reach out and try and help other manufacturing organizations with their workforce, right? That's not a typical model. We don't see that a whole lot, right? Usually community outreach is trying to help with emerging workforce and creating sort of a pipeline of talent and how can we connect. But it's really unique to see, that desire to, like you said, just raise everybody else up that might be struggling with some of these things and does not have the wealth of resources available, or to your point, a training location or,
Right.
something built out specifically for that. So it's really unique. I think that's what I find so interesting about it is just the concept of trying to bring everybody up to a certain level. And that's really something special that Michelin is doing. When it comes to the programming that we were talking about, some of those skills
Mhm.
you talked about developing the different curriculums that you have. Let's talk a little bit about what you've been offering in terms of the different technical competencies, and even where does a lot of that ideation come from? Where are you kind of focusing and why?
Right. So initially, 3 years ago, when we conducted the feasibility study, we were asking those initial manufacturers, what would your need be? And it always landed on electrical, mechanical. We knew pneumatics and hydraulics would be in the conversation, control logics. Those were kind of the easy to identify. But within our electrical control technology and our industrial mechanical technology classes at the time, we offered those, and they were 5-week classes in each, just in those two. And so immediately manufacturers were, I can't let an employee go for 5 weeks. It's something Michelin has in place, but we've had that in place for so many years that our facilities know that this is the roadmap of training. But we really had to listen to outside manufacturers and kind of pivot a bit. So when we looked at the interest of those classes, we pulled them back, pulled the instructors together, and we said, okay, if we have a 2-week time frame, what is the best of the best that we can pull out of these classes and really give them still a very impactful class that would continue the growth of those competencies? they have been our most popular. So we have an electrical troubleshooting class that is 2 weeks, with more than 70% being practical hands-on in the shop. So they're troubleshooting after some period of theory. And then our mechanical hand skill, we have each class taken the feedback of the students and we continue to improve upon that. So first week would be a lot about proper use of hand tools, to the second week going into a more advanced. So they have about 13 shop projects. Again, a lot of hands-on, practical hands-on. We find that those classes have the most positive feedback at the end. So we just continue that conversation at the end of every class. We're asking the questions. I personally come in with the students and I say, like, we have an open conversation. What are we not offering that you, as manufacturers at your company, an employee at your company, need? We have identified some offerings that we did one off, like a AC drive class. We have a guard logics class that there's been some interest, possibly a machinist class. So it's really just about having the open conversation. And again, me always being aware of the sustainability. If we were to offer this, is there enough interest, and how often throughout the year would we want this to be captured on our external calendar? So it's just a great conversation that we have continually with all of the manufacturers that have engaged in the external. So I hope that
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of went off a couple different directions. So yeah.
No, no, absolutely. I mean, having voice of the customer is so important, but to your point, Michelin being a large organization and being so deeply embedded in this sort of spirit of upskilling, like you said, 10 weeks of training or 5 weeks of training. Well, we know that's how it works, but to understand that other manufacturers really don't have the bandwidth to allow an employee to be gone that long and to make those types of adjustments and understanding what the specific needs are. I mean, that those are really the components of a strong training program, right? Is your voice to your customer, but also specific to how much time and what does the format need to look like and what's the specific content. So I like that there's ongoing follow up and discussion, especially from those people that are in the room, right? What are the things
Right.
that you're struggling with or you would like to learn more about? Have you seen certain ones be more popular right now? Kind of getting a sense of a pulse from where industry might have some gaps specifically. Have there been certain ones that have performed or had consistent, just full class consistently? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, so speaking of class, so we have a class capacity of 10 students. Students arrive, they're provided a laptop with all of the material that they then take with them at the end of the class. So a class of 10 students gives the instructor a really great opportunity to be dialed in on where each student is at. When we have multiple manufacturers, you have to imagine that a lot of these employees come in at different competency levels. So it's very important that they're here for every class because we accelerate through. We pack in all the goodness that we possibly can. In the way of what has been our most popular electrical troubleshooting, I actually just updated this yesterday. Electrical troubleshooting and our mechanical hand skills have been the most popular. Control logics follows behind, and then we've had a steady rhythm of the hydraulics and pneumatics. Based on a conversation both internally, our Michelin customer in our facility, and externally, we are developing a 3-day intro to maintenance class that we look to deploy externally next year. So again, that just gives another example of how we can in real time react to the need, whether it be within Michelin or externally. Where we are developing that class is in the way of providing a very, very high level overview of the electrical, mechanical, the fluid powers, both the pneumatic and hydraulic, and then wrapping it up with the safety aspect. This particular class is not intended for anyone to leave and go back and perform a maintenance role. It's for individual that is in another role currently that would like to consider the mobility within their career to move towards that technical maintenance pathway. Both, internally, we have employees that move from production operator roles and are successfully able to navigate. And this type of course would give that employee a better opportunity to evaluate before they actually make that transition. So we're just really excited. The external has really given our instructors the ability to realize that we can move faster in the improvements within our courses, and the freedom to be able to do that because of all the experience they bring to the table. So we don't have to wait once a year to update course material. We can do this in real time, and as a result, it just is elevating what we're delivering to the students.
Let's talk about your instructors for a second, because
Yeah.
I've met them. I met
Yes.
some of them, not maybe not all of them. And I'll be honest with you, they're just extremely impressive people. I mean, from the minute that you meet them, from the minute they start talking about the program, I mean, if you don't get excited about the program just by talking to them, there's obviously something wrong, because they just everything about the conversation, you can tell they're just really motivated. They're really excited about the content and what they're doing. I
Sure.
mean, are all of your instructors just long-term Michelin employees? I mean, they're just honestly, they're absolute gems. I just, where did your instructors come from? Is it internal, or where did that develop from?
Yeah, they typically all have come by way of pathway of that maintenance role. So some would have come by way of one of our apprenticeship programs into that maintenance role. Maybe they moved into some different areas centered around that, but then crossed over as an instructor at some points. We have our youngest, he's 13 years with Michelin. To one of our instructors is near more towards the 44 years. So on average, we're like 20 to 30 years. This is part of why it's so hard for me to navigate into another area outside, because the passion that they bring and family that we actually truly have, both in work and outside of work. It's like, how could you not want to be a part of this? They are really, really a big part of how people grow within their career. And even on the external side, the passion that the instructor pours into these students that they may only see one time, they'll return back to their employer, or maybe they won't come for another class offering. But while they're here, they're pouring as much passion into developing those students as we do internally. So yes, I love our organization. I also love the conversation around constantly having, what can we do differently than we're doing today? What can those future offerings be, and not get stuck in mindset of, well, we've always did it this way, because we know every manufacturing facility will look different from year to year, and push that envelope within our technical school with the instructors we have. It's pretty great to watch and be a part of.
I just think it's such an exceptional opportunity to be able to be in a class with someone who's extremely experienced, really passionate about what they're doing, and they're deeply invested in you being successful. I mean,
Yes.
you think about some of these other folks coming from other locations that really just don't necessarily have the staffing to
Sure.
really focus on an individual, and you go to these experiences and get hands on and just soak up all of this wonderful knowledge, and have someone who really cares about you learning this, and being better when you leave, and being more confident in the work that you're doing. That's just, there's something truly special about that. I mean, I think that's so terribly important. But I can't say enough about your instructors, the folks that I have met and been around. I don't think there's been a time that I've gone out of there and been like, huh. I mean, it's just, I'm lit up about it. And I haven't taken a single class. I love the fact there's so much excitement and passion behind it. I think that's what really makes it so special.
Absolutely.
And you know, with that, I'm curious, because I'm sure at this point, having done the program, has it been 3 years now?
We're in our third year, and we're
Okay.
now in the planning stages for what we will be releasing for 2025, that will be available for visibility in October. All of these instructors will come together, and they work in a way that they figure out, how can we continue to support the external, because this is an additional ask, above and beyond what we had previously been doing, and to watch how they work the schedule so that they can make sure we maintain it is exciting to be a part of as well. So Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious at this point after 3 years going into 4 years, are there just certain highlights or things that have stood out to either or your instructors in terms of, that was a real home run or wow, that was really rewarding? Or I mean, are there things like that that really stand out now that you guys have had some momentum, especially with the external training? Is there just a couple of things that really stand out that you guys really celebrated and said, "Man, that was awesome. That went well." Anything like that?
So there are a few circumstances or events where a student's gone back into their facility and at a later time text an instructor to say, I used the method that you provided in the classroom and I was able to figure out, whereas before I would not have. And it's those stories that, as any instructor, anyone developing people, you just need that little home run to just keep you passionate, especially our electrical troubleshooting class. I always say that the first week I should put a box of Kleenexes in the room because it's tough. And a lot of them at that first week are like, am I in the right field? They're questioning everything. But that second week, all the light bulbs, come on and you can just see the confidence building. Um, they are external students come in with a lot of, wow, this is Michelin training. They put on their own expectation, but they're excited to be here because, again, they're having an offering that, we haven't always made available to outside industry. And it's just really great to see how they engage. They really do look at it as a privilege that their employer is giving of this time in this an investment to further skill them in their position at their company. In no way do we have any other conversation but to stay focused to that. So, yes, there's a lot of great stories, and we really do get to know the students very well. And it is really hard, kind of on the last day when I go in to wrap it all up, like we're wrapping one up today, that, they'll be off and on their way, and we may not see them again, but we played a little role in potentially setting them up for success.
I'm sure it's something that they won't forget. I can picture someone years later in their career going back and saying, when I did the Michelin training, that was a game changer. That put me in a different position. I mean, that's the rewarding work, when you feel like you've really done something to make a difference. And I really feel sure that you guys are because it's just it's rare to be able to be a part of something like that. And I can't imagine the benefits it's having for those folks that have invested in it. Something that I wanted to ask you because I'm obviously a lot, listeners from South Carolina especially would be interested in this, but you know, what with these classes, what is kind of I don't want to say ideal candidate, but kind of what's the things that are, you might want to consider this before you send somebody, because I agree they are very intensive sessions. I mean, this is not like you said, the intro material is something very, very different. These are really intensive, action-packed classes and highly hands-on. So when people are thinking about, I might want to send one of my maintenance techs to these classes, what kind of a background can you give them or advice can you provide to listeners who might be thinking about that so they make the right choice both for their employee and for their organization?
Sure. And that was an initial concern when we launched this external Michelin. They test and vet their new hires. So we know that when we hire someone, they're already at a competency that we can successfully build on to get them to where we would like to see them grow within that position. Externally, we don't have necessarily that visibility. So certainly anyone that is sent to the classes would typically be in a maintenance role. We have had students, employee students, attend that have struggled. They either haven't had as much experience, maybe they've transitioned and they're new within that role. Maybe they came by production operator and they displayed some competencies, but not necessarily the level of competencies to go right into an electrical troubleshooting class. The great thing about our class size is that quickly the instructor can identify and work more closely with that student. And there have been a few circumstances where they have not been considered successful in the class, but they have left with more skill than they arrived with. And they've actually, this one particular student was, he was actually thrilled that he scored as well, even though it wasn't considered to be a passing score, and was very positive in his approach to what he could take away from the class. At the end of each class, we have a very detailed training report. It breaks down all of the components of the class, and the instructor goes into great detail of what they observed, how they could potentially continue growing this student if a recommendation is made. And then, of course, if successful, they have a certificate of completion of the class that they take with them. I send that to each company, to the employee, to the training manager, the HR representative, so they have that with them moving forward. But to your point, we don't have a pretest, so we have to evaluate pretty quickly, and that is the ability of the instructor to identify that early on. Some students come in early. The instructor always makes himself available for at least 30 minutes before the class. And should there be an exception made, we obviously would stay later or work through lunch. It really just depends on what the student wants to put in and how engaged they are. And but overall, they have really embraced the training in such a positive and exciting way that, again, it's like, why would we not do this? This is amazing for each of the students that attend class.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to have the additional support and it not be so confined to just classroom time and either you got it or you don't, we're moving on. That can make all the difference in the world for somebody to have a little bit of extra time, having that explained to them, especially if they feel like they came in, a little behind other people that had more experience. So I think it's great that the instructor has the ability to quickly identify, but then also, has the bandwidth to be able to really support that individual and help them to be as successful as possible. I mean, that's
Well, and early on, industry, when we were evaluating before we deployed it, industry was very clear to say we want the same measurement that Michelin has in place. So, however you're assessing the classes at the end of the class, we want that same level of measurement. So, every class ends with a written skills assessment and a practical hands on, and there is a weight in each one in order to be successful. And so we have continued that. And, for that reason, some have not been. It's a small amount, but again, they've left with more skills than they arrived with. And for that, they will be able to continue to build on this onto those competencies.
yeah, that's definitely the gold standard is to have that kind of documentation at the
Sure.
end of it, right? Like
And
you said,
everyone doesn't get a trophy. So,
yeah,
if you
yeah.
want to put, to say, oh, everyone was successful and just make that the stamp, that actually puts that employee and others at risk to not be honest about, where they were evaluated at the end of the class. And these are the areas that you may want to spend more time with your, employee upon their return to the facility. So we really are trying to be very transparent and very honest and detailed in what we provide the manufacturers that send their employees.
Yeah, whenever I think about, having a department, if I had had someone who could have given me, for your technicians, I mean, they were called fixers at the time, but if your technicians, have certain areas that they're really strong in, they've really demonstrated, here's some areas they might want to keep working in, you know, that's just a powerful thing. That's not usually something that I certainly didn't have access to it, right? So you had a lot of blind spots, but I mean, something like that being delivered at the end of the class to someone who's, the HR manager or is the person responsible for that particular employee, that's highly actionable, right? I mean, that gives you something that you can do something about and look at continuing that sort of skill development pathway. Doesn't normally happen. Most people don't have that. So I think even that at the close of a class is extremely powerful and it's highly actionable and it gets everybody on the same page, which is really
Sure.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I always, when I'm communicating with the employee student, I always copy their representative from their company because, again, the relationship is directly with the manufacturer. We have had individuals reach out wanting to enroll and pay for it themselves, but because of the nature of our training, the liability insurance involved, we can only deal direct with manufacturers. And so, and I don't foresee that changing. It protects Michelin, it protects the company that they're employed at currently. And the relationships, again, we have continued to grow in the trust in the community for what we are truly offering, and also open to what it needs to look like each year. It doesn't necessarily need to look like it did first year. There's a lot of things that have changed between now and then, and we're very open to what that need is.
I think Michelin has really kind of set the standard for what it looks like to do true community outreach with their other businesses, right? I mean, I love that you guys are doing that and the integrity that the program has in the sense that you're very particular about building the relationship with the actual manufacturer. I know that you do not include other people in the class from
For
Michelin.
Michelin,
So
that's
it's
correct.
a private class closed to only external enrollees. I just, I want to put it out there because I think people need to understand it about the program is that there's just, a high level of integrity behind what Michelin is doing. And it truly is with the intent of developing other,
Right,
other manufacturers' employees. So it's not a recruitment effort. It's not
absolutely
there's
not.
nothing about that there to really kind of try and upset what other people have established. And I
Right,
really, I applaud that. I think that you guys have always been in our relationship with the program, you guys have always been, very particular about that. You've always made sure that you're protecting other manufacturers from anything that might cause them disruption because you really have honest intent behind the program.
right. Well, it was the partnership with SCMEP, to me is so valuable because your mission is no different than our mission. And it really is just helping manufacturers as a whole identify what their need is, developing that, and then deploying what that would be. So, 3 years into our relationship, our partnership, I couldn't be happier because I really do feel with the offerings that you have and what Michelin's bringing to the table, it can only get better each year, and what that would look like.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to year 4. I'm
Yes.
excited about it. Can't
Here
wait
we
to see what's next.
go. I know, me too.
Well, Robin, I just want to thank you for being on the show. It's been a great conversation. I really hope that listeners take advantage of these opportunities, especially if they're in the South Carolina area, because I can't say enough positive things about the Michelin training and what you
Right.
guys are doing. And, kudos to your instructors. They're awesome folks. I'm looking forward to the next year to see what comes next. But thank you so much for being with me today.
Well, thank you for having me. All of the information for our offerings, of course, is on your website. Registration is also included. That was a very positive move forward in SCMEP being able to support that. So I'm here for any questions that anyone may would have, and open to potentially what a need would be that we're not currently offering. So I really appreciate the conversation and how we'll move forward in this external training.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks for listening to this episode of the 6 M's of Manufacturing podcast. Thanks to Robin Blackburn for sharing her experiences with Michelin's technical training programs and to Michelin for contributing expertise to the skill development of manufacturing employees in South Carolina. Visit the episode notes for reference, links, and information shared during today's discussion. Did you like what you heard? That is awesome. Follow our podcast and share with your network. And remember, don't just make it better.